Shelly Miscavige. She has not appeared in public since 2005.
Where's Shelly and what happened?
Where is Shelly?
We're looking at like 17 years of a person just missing.
Shelly Miscavige was given into the sole care of L. Ron Hubbard by her parents when she was 12.
This is where Shelly is believed to be being held captive.
Do you believe that Shelly Miscavige is a threat today?
Oh,
Absolutely.
she's seen it all. She's been by his side the whole time.
Welcome to the channel. I'm your host for today, Claire Headley. I appreciate you being here. And this is my first episode of Where is Shelly Miscavige? This is something I've been working on for a long time, so I'm very excited for this first episode. My guest for today is Marc Headley. I'm going to pop him in here. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you.
Got a different vibe going on here today.
Yes.
Yes, so I figured we would start this series and just explain and explore your relationship with Shelly and what you knew about her and your experiences. And then for episode 2, we'll flip and you can interview me.
Perfect.
Awesome. So let's start off with how and when you first met Shelly Miscavige and your impressions and so on and so forth.
Well, I first met Shelly. Well, I even first found out who she was in 1990 when I got to the Imp base. I had just turned 17 years old, I think. Did I turn 17? Yeah, I think I just turned 17 when I got to the Imp base. And when I went to the Imp base, the area where I worked was in the manufacturing division, and it's where they made cassettes. And every single person that worked in that area had either been sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force, which is like the Sea Org Gulag reprogramming camp, or they were kicked out of the Sea Org altogether. And so I want to say between the area, the audio area that they made the master recordings that we would then copy to all of the manufacturing, cassette manufacturing people. And I think maybe even the person that was over manufacturing, all of those people were gone.
Wow.
And so when I got there, I was one of the people that was going to replace one of those people that had been kicked out.
Okay.
And so, the person who had busted all the people in that area was David Miscavige.
Right.
So when it was being rebuilt from scratch, he would go there every single day and for months and months and months until all the new people were there, all the equipment had been repaired, everything was fixed. He would come every single day. And when he would come, Shelly would be there.
Okay.
So there was a lot of times that she would come and talk to me when he would be talking. And this started very early on. He would be there and he would be talking to Bruce Plotz or Luigi or Jason Bennick or whoever was supposed to be getting everything fixed. He'd be asking them, okay, what'd you get fixed? What's this? What's that? And then Shelly would come to me and she'd be like, hey, so what's been going on? And then I would tell her the unfiltered version while they were over there feeding him the bullshit version.
Nice.
And so then it became a thing where I would tell her and then they would tell him and then they would leave. And then the next day, some of his questions would be about the things that I told Shelly that were going on. And then I was like, oh, I see what's happening. When she leaves, she tells him, we might want to check about this, or I don't know. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but I would know some of those things would come up the next day.
Yeah.
And
I definitely saw that as a recurring theme too, now that you mention it, where she would cultivate these people that would feed her straight information.
Yeah. So that was sort of a common thing that would happen. And when I would see her, but then additionally, a girl that I worked with, her name was Clarice Barnett. and she was Shelly's sister.
Yes.
And she was the only single person that did not get busted that worked in that area.
Interesting.
She was the only one who was spared. Out of every single person, she was the only one that wasn't sent to the RPF. And
of course, I've been learning as I've been deep diving on Shelly's life that Clarice was in the Sea Org from the age of roughly 14, working with Hubbard on the ship
before
Apollo.
Shelly.
Yes, she joined the Sea Organization 2 years before Shelly, or 1 to 2 years before Shelly. Yeah. But it's interesting, nonetheless, despite her long history in the Sea Org, that she's the only person that didn't get busted in that whole mess.
Yeah, so I worked with Clarice for years. So that's how I heard a lot of Shelly stories and a lot of Clarice stories and like old-timey Sea Org stuff. And as far as I know, Clarice was one of the most senior longevity-wise Sea Org members on that entire property.
Yep.
So she was in her 40s, and she'd be in the Sea Org since she was like 13 or 14. And their parents were in Scientology before that. And so even I think when they were like 7 or 8, they were in Sea Org facilities, and there's all kinds of craziness that happened even before they joined the Sea Org.
Yes.
So, but either way, so Clarice would tell me stories, and then Shelly would sometimes come down just by herself without Dave, and she'd come and talk to Clarice. And then they'd go outside and smoke a cigarette or whatever, and I'd just be working. And then they'd come back in, and then Shelly would just go back to work, and then Clarice would go back to work, and then Shelly would come over and be like, "Hey, Mark, what's going on?" Da, 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 da. So there was a lot, even though at the Int base, I feel that a lot of people thought that her or Dave were unapproachable, or you couldn't just go up and talk to them. But because I was talking to them so often over the years, I wasn't afraid to talk to them because they knew I would just tell them whatever. And also they knew that I wasn't afraid of talking to them because I would just talk just like this, be like, and so, but that would happen a lot. And the best, I remember one of the best ones was that we had to run, it was an order from David Miscavige that we had to run 50,000 cassettes a week.
Yep.
And that's all that mattered, that 50,000 cassettes come over there every single week.
Right.
And we had been doing this for months and months, and the whole entire property had been assigned a condition of confusion, which is the lowest state of existence you can be in Scientology, is confusion, this condition. And one of the requirements for everyone getting out of confusion was that we make 50,000 cassettes every single week. That was an actual requirement for the entire place. And so there was a lot of pressure, make 50,000, make 50,000, make 50,000. And we would get like 46 and then 48 and then 42 or, whatever. We could never get 50. And one day we ran out of tape.
Oh, no.
The tapes cost $30 for a pancake, about $30, between $30 and $35, depending on TDK's pricing. But, and you could make about 30 cassettes out of one pancake. So it's basically 30 hours of tape. And an L. Ron Hubbard lecture was usually around 2 hours or 120 minutes. So you'd have 60 minutes on one side and you'd have 60 minutes on the other side, or 45 minutes on one side and 45 minutes on the other, whatever it was. But you get about an average of about 30 cassettes on a pancake. Yeah. And it was super expensive, the tape. And it was like $30 and we would go through 16 every hour.
Wow.
Every single hour of the day we would 16, because there was 16 slave machines that the master recording would run, and the slaves would record whatever the master was playing at high speed, and they would record at 32 times normal speed. Anyway, so we had run out of tape and we weren't making any cassettes. So you can barely make 50,000 cassettes if you run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mathematically, you can barely make 50,000. Wow. And you gotta also cheat and do like some music cassettes that are like a music single that's like 5 minutes, because then instead of making 30 cassettes a run, you make like 187. Right. And so then each one of those still counts as a cassette. So sometimes we'd make like, 7,000 music singles to pad the stat. Yep. Anyway, but regardless, we'd run out of tape. And I was on the night shift, so I was walking down to do some shredding. We had to do shredding every single day. If there was any paper waste, if it had any writing on it, it had to be shredded.
Right.
And that was a rule for the entire property. And you could never leave. And if
you didn't, you'd get assigned a condition of enemy, right?
You could never leave the shredding alone in a trash can overnight. Otherwise, you would get assigned to lower conditions. That's how hyper aware Scientology are, that somebody's going to take something and leak it out somewhere, that every single piece of property has to be shredded every night. Yeah,
like as if somebody's going to come on the property with a camera and be snapping pictures.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was walking down around 1 o'clock in the morning doing the shredding. I had a dolly with all this buckets of trash on it, and because I was on the night shift, and during the day that shredding machine's going all day and all night, so you got to go and get your shredding done, and you might have to wait there for a few hours. With the people that are already in your line. So the night shift guys, we just go down. There's no one else on the property at night, so we just do our shredding. Anyway, I run into Dave and Shelly, and they were in the movie theater. They were watching a movie, and the movie theater, for him to watch the daily shots that the film crew shot, or him to just watch 35 millimeter motion pictures that he gets from Tom Cruise or from John Travolta. He watches them in this theater, and it's on the way to the shredding. And I walk, and he comes out there eating popcorn, and Shelly comes over and she goes, "What's going on?" I said, "Oh, I'm just doing the shredding." And she's like, "Really? You have time to do shredding?" Because if I'm not sitting there checking the cassettes, we're not making 50,000 cassettes. I have to check every single minute of the night. I have to be checking cassettes in order for us to hit that 50,000. I was like, "Oh no, we ran out of tape. There's nothing for me to do." And she's like, "Oh really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, I think we ran out yesterday or whatever, and nobody got any. And when I came in for my shift, there was nothing to do. So might as well get the shredding done, And she's like, "Okay, thanks." And I'm just like, "Do-do-do." And then I go off to do the shredding. And then we're there all night cleaning, doing whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then in the morning, we go home on the bus and sleep all day long. And the day shift would get in on the bus. So we would meet them at the buses. And so the person that did my day shift would get off the bus, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I did all the shredding. I cleaned. Good to go. I'll see you at dinner." She'd be like, "Okay." And Linnea would go, and that would be that.
Yep.
And so then I come in at dinner time. I get off the bus, and it's like there was just a massive earthquake. People are running around and freaking out. And I'm like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Yeah, COB found out we didn't have any tape. Oops. And we done got some tape." And I was like, "Oh, really?"
Because you didn't tell anybody.
I didn't tell. I never would tell anybody if I had one of these. It was like, I don't know. I don't want to be the one that this one gets lobbed on. Anyway, and so that went on for years. I would tell her something, and then it would just be like, and then nobody would ever knew that I was the one that was telling these things.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I got treated worse for that or if I got treated better for that, but that was sort of the relationship. Then at some point, so that I was the quality control for just cassettes.
Yeah. But before we move on, didn't you also say that while you were on that in the manufacturing area, that Shelly's dad and Clarice's dad, Barney, would often call?
Yeah. So when I was working in tapes, this guy would call, and it was like, "Hey, is Clarice there?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, who's this?" And he'd be like, "It's Barney." And I'd be like, "Oh, like Barney Barnett, Clarice's dad? And he's like, yeah. And I'd be like, oh, dude, I've heard all kinds of stories about you. And then I'd be like, yeah, hey, somebody go get Clarice. And then somebody would run off to go find her. I'd be like, so what's up, Barney? You know, and I just talk to him and be like, yeah, you know, what's up, man? He'd be like, yeah, doing this. And be like, oh, cool. But this happened all the time, like maybe once every few weeks and so for a lot of sometimes no one would ever come back with Clarice. So like after like 15 minutes, I'd be like, yo, dude, I don't know where Clarice is, but I got to work. I'm going to get lit up if I don't get back to my station. And he'd be like, okay, no problem, thanks. And so that went on for years where I would talk to Barney. And then, you know, because we were on the night shift and we were there for, you know, we would come in at dinner, we'd eat dinner, 5:30. And then if we were there, every Sea Org member is supposed to study for 2.5 hours.
Right.
I'd probably say out of the years we were there, that for the 15 years I was there, I probably did about a year worth of study total. Like if you were to say you're supposed to go, you know, 5 times a week, I probably went 5 times a week for one of those 15 years, maybe max that much. So we'd be there usually from 5:30 until 8 a.m.
Okay. Every
night. And at around 11 or 12, that's when the day shift would go home.
Yep.
And so I would spend around 10 hours with this Clarice lady every single night. And
she was on the night shift as well.
She was on the night shift.
Okay.
This guy named Tony Cifarelli was on the night shift.
Yep.
And it was me. Those were the 3. It was only 3 of us. And we were almost the only people besides security that were just always on a night shift. There was a few other areas that had night, like the galley would have cleaners that would clean all night and they'd come in super early, but it was just us. So we would talk all night long while we were working. If we weren't listening to Depeche Mode on the stereo system, then we would be yapping. And Tony was a dork and we both were not dorks. So we would talk mostly to us. And when he would start talking, we would just be like, this guy's insane. He would tell us the craziest stories about like just New York things. And just, he's a really loud Italian, Tony Cifarelli. Right. And so we would really dunk on him a lot. And so kind of Clarice and I were kind of more buddies. And also Clarice loved Depeche Mode.
Nice.
She loved Depeche Mode.
Nice.
And Tony hated Depeche Mode. So I was like, I'm going to align with you because now we can outvote. Because we would basically, it was a democracy in terms of the music. It was like, I vote for Mode. And then Clarice would be like, I vote for Mode. And then Tony would be like, eh. Anyway, and every once in a while, he liked Young MC.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't even remember the songs, but it was like, go bust the move. You know, that's what he would like. And he was a mad dancer. He would dance around while he was the cassette loader. So he would take the pancakes and load them into the cassette shells. And Clarice would be the copyist. She would be the one who would copy the master recording to the pancakes. Okay. Anyway, so during that time, I heard tons of Clarice and Shelly stories from Clarice. And then I also talked to Barney. Nice. So then fast forward in 1993. So that was 3 years of cassette manufacturing. Sometime in 1993, I was promoted to what was called QC Gold. And that was the quality control for all of gold. And the idea was, and there was a whole program written that went out to the whole base, was like QC Gold on Post program. And it was, and the person who was above Golden Era Productions and CMO Int, his name was WDC Gold. And his name was Ken Mortensen. And his post was WDC Gold, the watchdog committee member for Golden Era Productions. And it was basically a member of the the Commodore's Messenger Organization, or CMO International, that was responsible for putting me on this job. And the purpose of this post was to make it so the things that were being produced in Golden Era Productions would get checked by somebody in Golden Era Productions, because the whole time I was there from 1990 to 1993, every single product produced by Golden Era Productions, which was, there were hundreds, every single one had to be final approved by David Miscavige.
Right.
And not only did he have to approve the final product, but he had to approve every sub-step of that product being gotten made. So if it was an audio lecture, he had to approve the lecture mix. Then he had to approve if there was, well, on lectures, I think that's all he had to, oh no, he had to approve the edit. So Hubbard said bad words like the N-word, or he said a racial slur. He talked about Asian people, whatever it was in the lecture that got chopped up. And they also chop out the sneezes and the coughs and the farts and all that other stuff. And then there is a lecture where Hubbard farted and burped at the same time. And I'm pretty sure they had to chop that out. Yeah. I think it's called a double horn salute. I can't remember what the term is, but either way, no, a dual flute salute. I think that's what it's called. But he would have to approve each of those steps for books, for lectures, for films, for videos. And so the idea was that I would do that and it wouldn't have to go to him. Or I'd start doing some, and then eventually he would have to do none.
Yes.
But for now, I was just another person who had to check it.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and also most of these things I had no idea about. And, but Shelly, and I never really knew why at the time, but Shelly would always come and be like, oh, you should do this and you should do this. And these are the things that I catch on things that go to COB. And these are the things that you should, no matter what, you should check for these things.
Yeah.
And so she would kind of give me tips. And then sometimes she would say, also, you can go in there right when they're getting it ready and see what they're doing. Because if you're there, you're going to see what's going on, and you might see something that's not right. And you can be like, hey, you guys got to fix that before you finish this, and then leave, and then make sure they fix it. So they don't do something they know is wrong, but they got to get it submitted. So that was the other dynamic, is Dave is ordering these people, I need it now.
Right.
And if you don't get it to me now, the world's going to end. And so people are cranking out things that aren't ready because they're worried they're going to get ended if they don't finish it. So it was this whole dynamic of, we're just going to give it to them because we don't want to get in trouble, even though it's fucked up or it's messed up. And then they're going to get in trouble.
Yep.
Or hopefully he doesn't notice. Well, he always notices, and he always finds something wrong with it, no matter what. If you could submit something and it would just get approved right away, you were sort of a rock star at the property.
Yeah, absolutely. And didn't Shelly say or imply that her goal was to train you to eventually take over this function from David Miscavige?
Yeah, she was sort of like, even when I first got on the post, she was like, how old are you? And I was like, I think I was 21 at the time, 20. Yeah, I think it was 20, 21. She goes, you know what COB was doing when he was 21? He was the head of this church. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, you need to get going. You need to speed it up. I was like, speed it? What the fuck is she doing? Anyway, but there was a lot of times where she's like, you could be doing half of the things that he's having to do. You could be doing those things, and then he wouldn't have to do them, and he could do his job. And I was like, okay. Anyway, so more and more things I was starting to check. And then, so he wouldn't catch those things. And most of the things was like that somebody would be doing a video submission, and I'd get the submission and the video wouldn't be in there. Like somebody forgot to put the VHS cassette in of what the video is that need to be checked. So those were the things that were being sent to chairman of the board, Religious Technology Center, is a video submission with no video in it. It was almost comical, the stuff that Like he's this big bad executive, and people are just sending him complete nonsense.
Yeah.
Because everybody is when you're freaking out, you're losing your mind, and you're trying to get a submission to this guy so he doesn't yell at you or beat you up or whatever. You're going to forget to put the video in every once in a while.
Well, and especially too when you factor in that many of these people were rarely sleeping and, whatever, all the craziness of the circumstances.
Yeah, probably 90% of these proposals that are being sent to him were preceded by 2 days of all-nighters, or, people doing things in their sleep.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in I'm trying to tell the stories about Shelly, but there's so many crazy stories that will be here forever. But either way, there was an event. It was the IES 1993, the War is Over event.
Yes.
And this is where David Miscavige announced that Scientology got tax exemption from the IRS, and this long, decades long war with the IRS was finally over.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Anyway, this was the way this events worked is they were videoed by Golden Era with like a production truck, that the same truck that goes to the Super Bowl or to an NFL game, and all these cameras, and they record the whole thing, and there's lights and there's sound, and it's a whole production that gets edited at Golden Era for like a week after the event. And then cassettes get made, VHS copies get made, and then they get sent out to all the organizations all over the world so they can have their event a week later.
Yep.
Well, for this event, some guy recorded a copy of the event in the truck, just a VHS copy, and gave it to another guy. These are all internal Scientology guys, but not from Golden Era Productions.
Oh.
So it was the events organization, which was it was part of International Management Public Relations, which was not, Golden Era Productions was not part of that. It was a separate group.
Right.
Anyway, this guy would copy a tape, and he gives it to another guy in LA, and then that guy just copies those tapes. And then he might copy 10 tapes and then take those 10 tapes and make 10 more copies so he can start sending out some tapes. So, and he was just doing this all on his own, total horrible quality.
Yep.
And no quality control.
Yep.
And
not the edited version that David Miscavige had approved.
Exactly. Now that is the key. That what you just said is the key. Because Dave looked so horrible on that video. Mm-hmm. And when he said, like he does this whole big speech he's going to say, the war is over. And then as soon as he says over like that, they're supposed to cut away from him and go to all the explosions and the pyro and the do-do-do and the music and the crowd. Yeah. Anyway, but in the edit, he goes, the war, and they cut away from him and they start showing all that. And he hasn't even finished saying the war is over. And so the copy that this dude had copied and sending to all these people, Dave looked horrible, and the edit was really nasty.
And it botched the entire punchline of the entire event.
Exactly. The only thing they needed to do was cut away from him after he said the war is over. They could have messed up every other single part of this video.
Yep.
But they messed up that one part. Okay, so we should have done a whole video just about this because now I have to tell the rest of the story. Anyway, but
well, we still can, but yeah.
But either way, the edit that went out to all these people was a bad edit. Now the background behind David Miscavige was like gold, and you're not supposed to put gold behind somebody who's Caucasian, because they kind of just melt into the background, and the colors don't. You need to have something that contrasts with their facial, with their skin or their face. Anyway, so everything was messed up with this video, and David Miscavige was making them edit and color correct it and all this stuff at the base before any could go out to be seen at the orgs.
Yep.
And he kept saying this edit has to be perfect before it gets sent out. this edit has to be perfect before, and it's already been sent. It's already been sent all over.
Wow.
There's thousands of copies. He just doesn't know. He doesn't know anything about that. And he's making these. Now, the part where he said the war is over was only on one camera. And that camera records into the truck on its own recording, separate from how it gets edited in the truck. Yep. So there is a tape of him saying the war is over. No, there's not. That tape was messed up. So it only recorded half of the recording for each frame. And so there is no recording of him saying the war is over.
Yeah.
There's half of one, kind of. So they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars getting that tape put through a computer system to recreate the missing frames so that there could be a tape of him saying the war is over.
Wow.
And that had to get done and then put back into the edit, and all this stuff had to happen. Meanwhile, these guys are still copying all these videos, sending them everywhere. And I get a report that there's a tape in Los Angeles of the event playing at one of the orgs, and it looks horrible and it sounds horrible. And so I have to do a whole proposal and get it okay that I drive down to Los Angeles to get this tape, because there can't be a tape. Where'd this tape come from?
Right.
Anyway, I end up finding out that there's all these thousands of tapes everywhere, and I start going to all these places in Los Angeles and just taking their tapes. Yeah. And so then,
because this is considered, or it is in Scientology, a quality degrade.
Yeah, and my job is to make sure that these tapes don't exist. That's the whole purpose of my job, and somehow they do. And because it's this rogue system that was in place, and this system had been in place for 10 years for events. Everybody just pretended it wasn't. Anyway, but I find out there's all these, somebody writes a report on me saying, hey, this guy came to our org and took our tape, and now we're not able to show chairman of the board's message to people. And so I get pulled in. I just get pulled into the commanding officer Gold's office with WDC Gold, and they say, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean? They go, we just got a report that you're taking the copies of the event out of the orgs. You're confiscating them as quality control gold. And I'm like confused. I'm like, yeah, that's my job. And they're like, you're off post. You're fired from your job. You're off post. And you're going to go down to editing, and you're going to get them to make copies, and you're going to bring them to the orgs. And and that's it. You're done. Your time's up.
Wow.
And so I go down to editing, and I'm crushed. I mean, I've been on the post for a few months.
Yeah, I remember when this happened. I was like, oh no. I figured it was just a matter of time.
Yeah, because I was a wild child.
Executive post, yeah, exactly, and yeah, but yeah, I remember this part of your story. But go ahead.
Anyway, so I go down to editing, and I'm sitting there like all just like, God, somebody took a dump in my Cheerios, and then Dave and Shelly walk in, and he's doing something with the edit or whatever, and I'm sitting there, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just seeing what they're doing on this edit, da-da-da." He goes, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And I'm just like, and then Shelly's like, "Tell him," like she's prodding me. "Tell him." And I'm like, I tell him the whole story, and he goes, "Are you kidding me? There's tapes around already of this edit that I've been trying to make these guys do so we can get it out before it's all, so they don't see something that's messed up, and they're already watching the messed up one." This is a month later.
Wow.
Month after the event.
Right.
Anyway, or weeks at least. And so he says, "So now what?" I go, "Well, I'm off post, and because I stole their bad copies." He was like, "But that's your job." And I was like, There we go. Anyway, so Shelly goes and gets all those guys that took me off post. And he was like, if you guys don't help this guy get those copies back here, you're off post.
Right.
And so this had kind of happened a few times where I'd get taken off a post or I'd get busted, and then Shelly or Dave would do whatever. But so fast forward, I do that post I'm trying to think of why I ended up. Oh, so I went to Denmark in 1995.
Yes, that's right.
And when I was in Denmark, I was on the night shift because that's the only time we could install the AV systems because they were doing construction and they were working in the offices during the day. So at night, we'd come in and put the cameras in the auditing room so they could record the counseling sessions. And we would tap the people that would try to sail people on Scientology and get the money. We would put the microphones in their phones and tap all the phones. And we'd do all that stuff at night. And then during the day, they'd be doing whatever. Well, David Miscavige came to Denmark to release the opening of the building, but we were still working on the building, even though he was going to say it's open. We're like, well, we still have a lot of work to do, but whatever. And he never saw me the whole time he was there. Even though I walked by him 2 or 3 times, he never saw me. Like he was with a whole entourage of people. And I knew that if I didn't make myself visible to him when he came there, and then he found out I was there somehow, he'd be like, hey, if he was there, why didn't he come see me? So when he was there, I made a special effort to like get in the way of one of these processions, and he just walked right by him. He didn't even. I was like, yeah, he didn't fucking even see me.
Interesting.
So then he goes back to L.A., and then somebody says, well, Headley's still working on the systems, and he's like, what? Headley was working on the systems in Denmark? I was there. I never saw him. He's like, oh, he's banging chicks in Denmark. That's what he's doing.
He went out of his way to tell me that too, remember?
Yeah. So he spreads this whole thing around the property that I'm banging broads in Denmark.
Yeah.
I'm on the night shift. So I don't know how many, like I was getting very little sleep during the day because even sleeping during the day is hard, but sleeping during the day, after you've been working all night and there are people, you're in the city and it's all the noise and everything. I wasn't out, trolling for Danish tail during the daytime.
Yeah.
Near the train station.
Yeah. Not to mention, I remember that you were skin and bones, literally, when you came back from
That's
Denmark.
right. Because the food there was so horrible. Every time anybody from the States would be there, we would get food poisoning if we ate any of the food they made for us. Because they were using rotten vegetables and rancid butter, and our systems were not used to that. No. So, anyway, yes, I was skin and bones, and I think I had like enough money to buy like a bag of apples and a block of cheese, and that's just what I ate for every week. I just buy another bag of apples and a block of cheese. Yeah. Anyway, so I finish installing everything, and I come back to the base, and I'm in trouble, and I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, supposedly you need to go get sec check. You were banging chicks in Denmark. I was like, what? Said who? Said COB. I was like, yeah, he didn't even talk to me yeah, that's why he said you were banging bronze. I was like, because he didn't talk to me, I'm the one banging bronze.
Right.
Anyway, so I get sec checked and I wasn't banging any broads. So I was like, oh, that's the end of that. And so then he was like, okay, good, come to Florida and fix all the systems that I need in Florida. And I was like, really? You took me off post? And this is the other thing I found out at the same time. When I was in Denmark, it was proposed that I go to RTC.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And I was supposed to go
Religious
into
Technology Center, the top organization in all of Scientology. That is David Miscavige's personal police organization of the entire Scientology structure. Yeah,
so because I was out ethics in Denmark, I was taken off of going into RTC.
Right.
Even though afterwards it turned out I wasn't doing that. I didn't go back on to going into RTC. It was like
I could never understand that either. It was
anyway,
just weird.
Fine. I don't give a shit. And even when they told me like you're not going to RTC now, I was like, oh, too bad, so sad. you seen those cold-hearted fuckers up there in RTC? I don't want to be one of those guys. They suck. Anyway, so then Shelly, I'm meeting up with Shelly in Clearwater. I'm fixing a system in his office. I'm fixing the system in his apartment. I had to go there one morning when he was sleeping, and Shelly came in at 90 and was like, okay, I'll show you. I was like,
I
put some
remember
clothes on.
This story did make it into your book. It was hilarious.
Well, I mean, she's wearing a sheer nightie. I'm
Right.
like, come on, hon. Like, if you didn't want me to see what you got, then you would have put something over that. So anyway, I was like, whatever, I'm good. I'm going to fix the system. This is a trap, I know, for sure. Anyway, so I fixed this. I fixed the cable. Anybody who has seen Big Lebowski will get that reference. Okay. So I fixed the cable, and then I went to, I did a bunch of stuff in his office at the West Coast building, and basically Shelly would come and talk to us and be like, you got to do this and you got to do this, and COB's doing this. She was always kind of like pleading with us. Like, if you could just do this and get this done and this done and this done, then he wouldn't worry about it, and then you'd be a trusted person. I'm not using the exact Sea Org Scientology lingo, but she would be like, you need to be a trusted terminal for him, that when he says do this, you just do it, and there's no questions. You just get it done, and then you report back it's done, and you just do the next thing. And so I was sort of doing that, and then we had this problem where we were supposed to play a film that he'd been working on the bass of, the sound. He wanted the bass to just be like, it was this new film. I think it was the film with Jason Begay in it, where he, was it that one? I can't remember which. No, it was the Angel. It was the Angel film, where the angel comes down and sex checks this guy, and then he comes back from hell and he goes to heaven instead, or he goes back to earth, or it's Scientology is crazy, people. Anyway, so that film, he wanted the edit and the mix to be amazing, and he wanted to show it to all the people in Clearwater, and it was going to be this big release. And Jenny DeVos came up into the booth right before the film played. She wanted to hear it. In order for her to hear it, we had to turn off the subwoofers so we could play it into her headphones without playing the subwoofers out. And then she ran off. Okay, good. Sounds great. She doesn't know sound from fucking, could have been the worst mix ever. She would have been, oh, okie dokie, Smokey. Anyway, so then we play it, but we forgot to turn the subs back on. And then David Miscavige just busts into the projection booth like, wah! Anyways, throwing his Scientology boss baby fit. And then I got sent, according to him, he briefed the whole property about this when we both got back to Los Angeles or California, and he said that I had to send Headley back in a body bag.
Right.
And
I remember that. I was there. I was like, brilliant.
And
now what?
And that was the day before Sea Org Day.
Yes.
And I was gonna be like, just like treated like royalty, because I'd been working for COB, and I was like coming in for like boom, because I was just slaying it every day up until that one screw up.
Yep.
And then I had to fly back like on a red eye back to California. I got picked up by security at the airport. It was just like, oh, great. I had to get dropped off by security, by Paul Kellerhouse, the security chief in Florida. He was the one who put me on the plane, and another security guard took me off the plane. Like, so they 100% this guy's gonna blow. He just got sent back to the base in a body bag. He's definitely gonna blow. Anyway, and that's when it's Sea Org Day. He comes up and says, "Hey, I heard about your buddy." And that lead singer from Depeche Mode had just had a near death, dead for a bit experience, and then was kind of brought back. And I'm like, what? Like, now you're kicking me while I'm down? You're going to talk about Depeche Mode, dude?
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, gosh.
Yeah, and in that same conversation, he turns to me and says, "You're still married to him?" I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so I get put back in that place in the cassette manufacturing, just right back to where you came from, boy.
Yep.
And then Shelly came and talked to me a few months later and was like, "Hey, I think you should be the shoe crew chief," or one of the RTC people did. And when I asked her, she said, they basically said, yeah, Dave said you should do this. And I was just kind of like, what? I'm in the cinematography department? I'm not a cinematography guy. They're like, I know, but you're going to be the guy that's going to get 16 shots every day. And they can't get 16 shots every day to save their life. Anyway, so the whole time I was doing that job, I would see Shelly once in a while, and we did really good, and the crew started shooting the 16 shots a day. And for the first time in decades, that that department, the film shoot team, they were rock stars for years because we were doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I was, I don't want to brag, but I was the dude. There were other people as well that had to show up with me, but, I made it happen. And so I kept getting promoted, and I kept talking to Shelly and Dave. And from that point, I want to say pretty much from that point all the way up into the 2000s, I was constantly getting promoted.
Yeah. And by this time now, I was in Religious Technology Center.
Yeah. So when in 1996 is when you went to Religious Technology Center, and I had just gone to the shoot team. So I was away from the base for months and months and months, living in Los Angeles at the Big Blue building in Los Angeles while shooting the films. And then you got promoted to RTC and you went to Florida for a year. So we didn't see each other for probably about 2 years added up. Also because I was in Denmark for 6 months or whatever it was. So there was probably from like 1995-ish to almost all of 1995 and all of 96. We never saw each other. Exactly. Maybe we saw each other for like an hour if I went to Florida for an event, or you came to Los Angeles for an event with Dave or Shelly, that we may have seen each other.
Right.
In 2 years.
Yep.
And but I was seeing Shelly a lot, and I don't remember what happened. Something happened because I was the shoot crew chief, but on events, when we did an event, you would switch. Your job would switch over to an event job. And I was the stage manager and the stand-in for David Miscavige at the event. Right. So they would do all the lighting and the makeup and all that on me. And I would literally spread my legs really wide so I could be as short as him. Yeah. And I would stand in front of the podium and they'd just do my makeup, and I'd just talk at the podium for hours. And then I went over to the bakery, and I would just tell stupid stories. But Shelly, I would talk to Shelly on those events as well. And I don't remember. I think I got in trouble. I don't remember what happened, but I got in trouble for something, and they were like, "What's going on?" It's like you get an interview, and they're like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you a flat ball bearing?" Yeah, and I'm like,
they investigate you. To find out
they investigate me.
On.
I'm like, "Oh, what's going on?" It's been like 2 years since I seen my wife.
Yeah, I remember it was the New Year's event, 1996.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
because I said all this. I was like, yeah, this is a bunch of bullshit. And again, I do think about Depeche Mode, your needle's floating. Okay, well, he's not up to anything. He's just pissy that his wife's gone. And like the next day, you were at the event.
Yes.
And I was like, and then Shelly pulled me aside and she goes, "You're welcome." And I said, "Thank you." She goes, "No, seriously, you owe me." And I was like, what? I laughed. I was like, what am I going to give you?
Yeah, no, and for context, it was planned. So even though I'd been in Clearwater, Florida for a year, it was planned that I was then going to be working as Religious Technology Center at the Celebrity Center in Los Angeles, which
That's right.
meant that this 2-year period where we very rarely saw each other would extend indefinitely.
Yeah, like there were people at the base who worked there and their spouse worked in Los Angeles, and some of them hadn't seen their spouses in 10 years. Even though, like, this person was there, you always knew him as this name, and then you meet somebody in LA and you're like, "Hey, are you have any relation to, blah, blah, blah?" You'd be like, "Yeah, that's my wife." I'd be like, "But her name's been that for 12 years. And you're like, "Yeah, we've been married for 20 years. You'd be like, "You haven't seen her in 12 years. It's like, "Oh, I saw her at New Year's. I saw her at Christmas." You're like, "You've seen that broad 13 times in 13 years.
And
you're
she's your wife.
Yeah.
Wow.
So very common occurrence for the spouses to just be separated and nothing to happen. But because I had complained, and then Shelly was like, "This is my guy in Golden Era and he ain't happy. Okay, fine. We'll bring Claire to Los Angeles." And even then, you would be in Los Angeles, just not in Florida.
Right.
And so then I'd only see you if we happened to be doing an event in Los Angeles. And so I think over the months, I was like, hey, yeah, that's not really how this was supposed to work. And then eventually you came back to the property. And then pretty much from that point forward, I was always in trouble. So we never saw each other anyway.
Yeah. And actually the timing was that within 6 weeks of that New Year's event, Shelly had changed my assignment so that I would end up back at the headquarters in Gilman Hot Springs, working at the same place as you. And didn't she tell you owe me?
She did. She did say, you owe me.
Yeah.
And I think it was on that time that she said, you owe me, was when you came back to the base.
Okay. Yeah.
But either way, we would still have a thing where, you know, even on the events, I was recording Dave. We were having a meeting with him, and I had a little pocket PDA, like a little portable device thing.
Yep.
And there was a red light on it, and she looked at me like, while he was talking. And then after, she's like, come here. And I was like, what's up? She goes, were you just recording that? I was like, yeah, so I'm going to, just so I can keep notes or whatever. She's like, no, give me the card. And she took the memory card. I was like, well, I need that back. She's like, yeah, I'm going to erase it and then I'll give it back to you. And I was like, what? Wow. Well, just erase the recording. Don't erase all my notes and stuff. She's like, whatever, we'll figure it out. And I was just like, she's like, don't ever record him ever again. I record him. Yep. You don't record him. And I was like, oops. And then I was sort of like, hopefully the other recordings, she doesn't find those. And then I think she did erase every recording I had. Oh, but I'm trying to think of the next time. Even after that, so I want to say I was doing pretty good. I would get in trouble, but I would never get demoted. I would always just get promoted. And then it would be like, oh, Headley, whatever, we're getting promoted to do this and we need this other person. So we got to get Headley. Be like, oh, not Headley. Be like, yep. And be like, Headley, you're going to come with us. You're getting promoted. And I'd be like, oh man. Cause I know it's just like, I got more shit to do. I hate getting promoted.
It seems like you're always on top of the world or underneath, in the worst trouble you could possibly imagine. Yeah,
but I would never get taken off post. I would just be sleeping above the stairwell near my office in on some plywood with a sleeping bag and have a little pop-up alarm clock.
Let's talk about the meeting with management where Shelly handed you the clipboard.
Yeah. So that's about when things started getting a little rough in the late 1990s, 2000. That was sort of when there was a major sea change of Dave's beating on people. He's going insane in meetings, like just literally bonkers. And Shelly's having to do damage control after the meetings, get people Band-Aids for injuries and are you okay? And he just came from a really bad meeting. I'm sorry, this shouldn't have happened. And you're like, what? This dude is losing his mind. Anyway, we were in some meeting somewhere. I think it was in what's called the compilations area where they make all the books and the material, the courses and everything. And something happened. There was some kind of legal flap or something. And he runs out and everybody runs with him. Well, before that, Shelly was doing something with him and she had handed me her whole clipboard and her package of stuff that she had. She had a bunch of papers and a really nice leather, organizer. And it was all her stuff. Yeah. And so she hands me that and we're doing something. And then this thing happens and they all run off. And then I'm like, well, I guess the meeting's over. And then I'm like, oh, I got her stuff. And I was like, I think I need to go to the bathroom. And then I need some privacy. And I just go to the bathroom. I'm just like, And I have a photographic memory, so I'm like, anyway, I find this document in there. It's the first document, actually. And it's a list of all the RTC staff members in every single part of RTC. And it says their name, what organization they're going to go to, and the reason why they're going to go to that organization. And at the very top of the list, it says Claire Headley, CMO Int, Marc.
Right.
And I'm like,
and it wasn't and it was in sequence of seniority in religious technology.
So you were literally the first top person on the list. And I was like, Claire, CMO Int, Marc. And I'm like, well, that's choice. So after all this, she's going to get kicked out of RTC because she's married to me. So I'm like, what's the point of bringing her here if you're going to throw her out, or if she wants to stay in? So that's when I'm like, oh, I am totally toast, because this happens all the time. You get told that the person in RTC says, hey, you can't be married to that person because they're not in RTC. You're sleeping with the enemy. And then they ain't married to that person the next day. Right. And it's like, see ya, I'd rather be in RTC than to be because if you get transferred out of RTC, there's not like a person who gets taken out to RTC and they go to the cushy job. No. Okay. So normally you don't get promoted. You don't get a good cushy job when you get kicked out of RTC. So I saw that list, and then I can't remember. I think I went up to the villas. That's where RTC was, on the international headquarters. And I think I went up. I think my legs were asleep by the time I was done in that bathroom, sitting on that toilet, reading through all her stuff. I think that my legs had fallen asleep. That's really usually, that's an international telltale for you have been on the toilet too long, when your legs fall asleep. Anyway, so
did you see anything else interesting in there, by the way?
I don't really remember. I was sort of shocked from the first thing. Yeah. And so all the rest of the stuff was just like, whatever. Like, it wasn't anything exciting. It wasn't juice. It didn't have my name with my wife's name on it. Like, what? Anyway, so when I went back up to the villas, she was right there. Like, she knew I was coming, kind of thing. Yeah. And I said, sir, you left this. And she was like, you didn't. I was like, she was just like, you motherfucker. Anyway, but I was just like, what am I supposed to do? Right. I was like, come on. There's not. So she
knew. So she knew that
100%. And also, that was sort of my kryptonite. I couldn't lie. So I was just like, no, come on. Yeah. Hey, sucks to suck. You left it with me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so ever since then, I would ask you, like, after that point, when I did run into you, or I see you every few months, and you were like, you're got in trouble again, and I was like, are you going to divorce me or what? And you'd be like, no, I'm not going to divorce you. I'd be like, if you divorce me, it's going to be bad, because the only reason I'm still even here is because of you. This place is a giant nightmare, and you're the only thing that's worth sticking around for. So if you divorce me, I'm going out in a blaze of glory. And I was very clear about this.
You were.
The whole entire time after I saw that document. Yep. Anyway, so then over the years, I'm pretty much from 2000 forward, there was not a lot of good stories. The last good story, well, there was when we did that musical chairs thing.
Right.
And when we played this game of musical chairs, and we should do a video just about the musical chairs, but if you just look up Scientology musical chairs, or if you've read Going Clear or seen the movie Going Clear, or I think it's even in the Tampa Bay Times article, the musical chairs incident, and it's in my book in excruciating details. But David Miscavige played a game of musical chairs with all of the international executives of Scientology.
And Mike Rinder was there for that too,
yeah,
right?
Mike Rinder was there. Yeah. Marty Rathman was there. Mike Rinder was there. Shelly Miscavige, David Miscavige, any of the executives that Scientologists know the names of that were at the national management are in this game.
Yep.
And for some reason, and I don't even know why, the commanding officer, Golden Era Productions, and myself, I was the producer, Golden Era Productions, were also to participate in this game.
Yeah.
And the way David Miscavige explained the rules was whoever doesn't get a chair is getting kicked out of the international base, and you're going to get sent to the worst possible far-flung base doing the worst possible job as a Sea Org member at that location. And it didn't matter if you had a spouse at the property or if you'd been here your whole life or whatever, who cares? You're gone. If you don't get a chair, you're gone.
Yeah. And for context, this type of brutal meeting was not uncommon for the management executives, but you from Golden Era Productions were never included in those.
Yeah, when we went to meetings with the international executives, it was sort of like, yikes, we thought he was mean to people in gold. He is downright sadistic to these Commodore's Messenger organization people and international management, EDN and the COCMOint and Mike Render, WDC OSA, and all these people. He's just calls them the most vulgar names in meetings the entire time.
Right. And you would see that during meetings about the events, but
yes.
Otherwise, day to day, you didn't see any of that until this one.
Well, I was at a lot of event meetings, so we were kind of accustomed to the event ones. But then it was a whole nother level when it was just the management guys and just one or two of us gold guys there.
Yes.
At the events meetings, it was lots of gold guys and lots of management guys. So he would not be he would be rough. He climbed across the table one time, tried to beat up Jeff Hawkins at a meeting. He's done some crazy stuff at meetings, but either way, this was one of those, just like, how high can the sadistic level get up to? Yeah. And in that thing, everybody lost a chair except for the commanding officer, Golden Era Productions. Every single management person didn't, in the end, after there was only one chair left, the only person that stayed was this person named Lisa Schroer, the commanding officer of Golden Era Productions. And he was basically like, okay, sorry guys. You did what you could, but you didn't make it. And he was like, if anybody would have asked me or told me they did something and I would have maybe left. And I was like raising my hand, like right here. And he was like, what, Headley? And I'd be like, I did this and I saved the money on this. And I've saved millions of dollars on this. And I did this and I did that. And there's no way that I'm getting lumped in with these lazy fuckers. And I did that. And then he was like, okay, fine. You come over here with Lisa. And then everybody starts raising their hands. He's like, no, you missed your chance. Headley, he'll just say whatever he wants to say. He's going to do it. He's with Lisa now. So him and her are going to stay. And now all the rest of you guys are out there. And Shelly was like, you lucked out, Mark. Yeah. You lucked out. You better go and get some stuff done because you just squeaked out of here.
Yeah. And do you remember, by the way, that so Religious Technology Center had a certified travel agent, and that person had printed airline tickets, everything for all of these people to be shipped off the next morning. A bus was lined up, everything. Like it was for real.
Yeah, he even said at one point during the meeting, he's like, you guys don't believe that you're actually flying out of here tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so people would get brought in their plane tickets. Like, here's your ticket to Canada. You're going to scrub toilets in Canada. And you're just like, what? Anyway, so it was pretty brutal. The whole thing is in my book. But at the end of that, the last time that I really had any kind of dealings with Shelly, any major dealings with Shelly, was when I was the systems. Well, I had got taken off post as the producer. It was very shortly after that musical chairs thing. Marty Rathbun blew. The whole place started burning down in terms of like people. Like, a new person would literally get taken off their post almost every single week. It would just be like, oh, this person's gone. Okay, next day, this person's gone. Or all of management's gone. You guys are off post. You're not doing jobs. You're just in the hole. And it was just like, oh, this is insane. Yeah. Anyway, I got taken off post and I got put into manufacturing again, right back where you came from. and so they called me, and he had gone to South Africa and opened an organization, and the audiovisual systems were a total nightmare flap, and he was having to deal with it himself and get the systems installed. And then that same thing happened in Madrid, Spain.
Yep.
And then he was going to go to New York after Spain. And it had already blown up in South Africa, and it had already blown up in Spain. And as soon as that happened, a bunch of people from international management that came down to manufacturing, and even including the manufacturing secretary, this gal named Caroline.
Yep.
And there's no satisfaction on Caroline's train. Anyway, this girl and all these international management, this woman, Caroline, they were like, you need to go to New York and do the systems. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And they're like, no, it was a flap in South Africa. It was a flap in Spain. I'd be like, yeah, the organization's going to open in 4 weeks and they're still building it. There's like 300 cameras to install, 6 film projection rooms. And I'm just like, you guys are insane. Yeah. Anyway, they're like, no, you have to go. If you don't go, we're going to tell David Miscavige that you refused to go do the systems, even though that's the thing you love doing.
Yeah. And to be clear, they are sending just you to do all of that. Nobody to help.
No, they sent Gerald Duncan with me. If you want to see what Gerald Duncan looks like, search Marc Headley, Gerald Duncan, and there's a hate video from Gerald Duncan. Right. But Gerald Duncan was sent with me to, well, first of all, they say you got to go. Of course, it's a total setup because it's an impossible task that it would take me 4 months to do. But I only have 4 weeks. It's only me. I haven't studied the space plans and the electrical and what's being built. It's just that you know how to build the systems. I build them all the time. But you have to figure it out when you get there. And we're going to send it whatever you need. You can tell us what equipment and we'll send it if it's not already there. And I'm like, this is a total setup because Dave's going to get there. It's not going to be done. And they're going to say, well, Headley was the one working on it. And then I'm going to go to the RPF or, whatever.
Yeah. And meanwhile, by this time, I had been kicked out of Religious Technology Center because I refused to divorce you.
That's right.
Because I remember hearing we were in the double wide trailers that later became referred to as the hole.
Yeah.
And that was where you were being prepared to be sent to New York. And I was just like, oh, no, this is not going to go well. Yeah.
Everybody knew it's gut. Because here's what happens in the Sea Org. When everybody below David Miscavige knows that there is a time bomb waiting for him to find and that he will eventually get to where it is and he will find it, there needs to be somebody that can be on the hook for that time bomb. Yep. And so over the years, they perfected the setup for that to load that person in right before the bomb's going to go off.
Best known as the sacrificial lamb.
Head on a pike. On a pike.
Yes.
Anyway, so I'm like, I'm the guy. Perfect. And so I just got busted. So I don't have I used to have a win, a lose. A win, a lose. Well, now I got a lose, and this is going to be the one. It's like, I'm out. I'm going to die. Anyway, so I go to New York. I stay up all day and all night, and Gerald Duncan is my mission second. I'm the mission IC, this New York Systems mission IC, and Gerald doesn't know how to plug in a headset. Okay, He doesn't know how to plug in a headphone. He doesn't know. He's the ethics. He's the director of inspections and reports, which is like the chief of police in the Sea Org for your organization. Right. And he already has it out for me. Right. The whole time I've been he had it out for me when he was the security chief at the HGB in Los Angeles when I worked at Able. And then he had it out for me the whole entire time I was at the base. Yeah. And he could never, it was like It was like when the police guy's always trying to catch the bad guy and he can never catch him in the act and he always gets away. That was me and Gerald. Gerald was always on the hunt and I was always like, you didn't get me this time. Better luck next time. Anyway, so.
But isn't it fair to say too, just in terms of the mission? So mission is two or more people go to handle a specific situation.
Yeah.
The mission second is technically supposed to be qualified to help you get the work done. But in this case, his only purpose and goal was to make sure that you did not escape.
That's right. His only purpose for being there was to make sure that I didn't just sneak out into Times Square and disappear.
Yes.
When I would go to sleep, the rare times that I actually would like go, I gotta go sleep for like 5 hours. Then Gerald would stay with me like until 2:00 in the morning. And then we'd walk to the birthing because he didn't want me to leave the org without him. So if I stayed there and just worked all day and all night, he could just tell the security guards in the org that are there, hey, if that guy leaves, you have to call me. And he can't leave without me coming back to get him.
Yeah.
So I'd stay, he'd stay with me. And then when we would go to the birthing, I would sleep in the bed and he would lay the mattress down on the floor so that there would no way for the door of the room to open without getting him out of his mattress and lifting up the mattress to open the door.
Unbelievable. So you're locked in a room with Gerald Duncan.
Literally. And there's no bathrooms in these rooms. You got to, trust me, those times I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, hey, get up. I got to go to the bathroom. You freaking crazy. Anyway, so 4 weeks goes by and there's this guy that works for Dave and Golden Era Productions. His name is Henning Bendorf. And Henning Bendorf is the one who designs all these what do you call it?
Stages,
German 1940s period type pillar stages with this gold encrusted podium in the middle and all the stairs up to it. He's the one who designs all the events and all the technical training film sets and all this stuff. And he's a golden boy for Miscavige. And he, even though he works in Golden Era Productions, if he says, like he said when he got to New York, hey, if Marc Headley is in New York when I get there, I'm going back to Golden Era and I will not attend the event and I will not be there because when Dave Miscavige gets there, when COB gets there and find out that Mark's there, a bomb is going to go off.
Yeah. And just side comment, he's pretty much the only person in the entire Sea organization that could get away with doing that.
Yeah. I mean, David Miscavige gave him a Mini Cooper for his birthday because he's such a rock star.
Yeah, it's like nobody could just say, oh, I don't like how you're doing this, I'm not going, except Henning.
That's right.
Yeah.
So he says that when he's in Spain and he's about to come to New York because he heard from somebody that Marc Headley was there.
Okay.
Or something. That's the story I was told. I think it was even by Gerald because what had happened was before David Miscavige gets somewhere, the Golden Era Productions and the event guys, and there's even like an RTC hit squad that goes there before he does there.
Yeah.
So Amber, your cousin, who's there's a video in the description in the playlist on our channel, Danish documentary, and you'll see who Amber is in that video. And Amber she's on the hit squad. She works in David Miscavige's office as a steward, and she goes and puts ashtrays wherever he's going to kind of meet with people or be, and stashes drinks and waters and snacks and fridges. And she's like getting everything ready so that no matter where Dave goes in the New York Scientology building, that there's his kind of stuff everywhere that she can easily, there's Camel non-filters, cartons all stashed all over the organization with Penta water?
Yes.
That he liked Penta water bottles and, all this stuff everywhere. And she sees me and we were very friendly when I was still there. And she'd be like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm doing the system. She's like, oh boy. I'm like, yep. And then I'm like, oh yeah, D-Day's tomorrow. She's like, it sure is. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting as much. And oh, by the way, I got so much done in 4 weeks. I probably got 3.5 months worth of work done in the 4 weeks I was there by myself. And I did have, all the stuff being sent to me, but I was rocking it out. I was totally like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to do it.
Right.
Even though I know I won't be able to, I'm going to do as much as they were still building 2 of the projection rooms, the theaters, that day. Like the day before he got there, they were still building. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't put a screen up in a room that doesn't even exist.
Right.
So, but everything that was done, all the systems were done. For everything that was built, all of the audiovisual systems were installed, tested, working amazingly.
Yeah.
Okay. So they send this hit squad. Some of the gold crews that's how Henning found out. Some of the gold guys started showing up. They're like, oh my God, Marc is here. And they're like, no way. Are they insane? They sent Marc? Like, if COB sees Marc, he's going to lose his mind that he's the one doing the systems after it flapped in all these other places. Anyway, so this big thing happens, and Gerald comes and says, you're getting on a plane. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, Henning said if you're here when he gets here, he's not even getting off the plane. He's just going to fly straight back to the base. I was like, oh, right, really? Okay, whatever. And they're like, yeah, and David Miscavige is supposed to land in like 8 hours. Yeah. So you're going to get on a plane. And I was like, okay. He's like, we're going to get the ticket, but just so you know, you need to start cleaning up, get whatever you've done as much as you can get done. And then the second we have a plane booked, you're leaving. You're going to the airport.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And I'm just kind of like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew I was going to be the sacrificial lamb. So whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then I find out they get me a ticket and I've got my stuff and I literally just have like a backpack. I have like 2 changes of clothes I've been wearing the same pair of fucking undies, for fucking 4 weeks. Anyway, I'm going out and one of the gold guys says, Marc, just so you know, you were never here. And I said, what? And they said, you were never here. And I said, is that how they're going to play it? And he goes, yeah, you were never here. Wow. And it was a guy who used to work for me. So we were told, I was like, really? That's how? He's like, yeah, you were never here. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, when Henning gets here and Lisa and all these people, we're going to figure it out. We're going to put like a whole team on the system so that they get done. But you were never here. And I was like, okay. And so Gerald takes me to the airport. I get on a plane. I fly back to the base. I get picked up by security at the airport. I get brought back to the base. And I just go back to work like nothing happened. Like I'm literally the UV coating I see night shift. Yes. And I was the guy who would, if it was a glossy binder and they only wanted a little section to be glossy, I would put a UV coating over everything else and just that one section would be glossy or whatever.
Which side comment, I was utterly terrified the whole time you were on that post that you were going to get cancer.
Oh yeah. Every single person that was on that post would get deathly ill. Even people that just helped us for the day.
Even the RTC people that would come by.
They got sunburned.
Sue Wilhair got like her eyes were blood red for like 2 weeks. And I was like, what?
It was a UV light that you would cook the paper and the coating with, and it would cure it. Mm-hmm. And you would have to wear these special goggles. Sue Wilhair, she didn't want to lose the goggles because it was going to mess up her makeup or her hair or something. I was like, you have to wear the goggles. That's a very powerful light. It's not good for you. You have to wear the goggles. And she refused, and so her eyes got ruined. I was like, they were like, why didn't you tell her to wear the goggles? And I looked at Sue. I was like, she's like, he told me to wear the goggles. And I was like, but why didn't you she's like, he told me to wear the goggles about 30 times. And I was like, yep. She refused. Anyway, so I'm there coding I'm on the night shift as well. So all the bull that goes on during the day, I'm just sleeping.
Yep.
And I come in at night, do my thing, go in the morning. I'm like, yeah. I loved it. I was like, and even then, and this is a really crazy thing. If you were one of those people at the Ant base, they called you under the radar. Remember that?
I totally do.
They would say, you're just playing. You're just flying under the radar. I'd be like, yeah, that's right, baby. I'm flying way low crazy. Under the radar. Yes. Anyway, so Dave shows up in New York. Boom. They're not even done building the building, much less the systems. And Of course, all the systems that weren't installed, huge flap. What the hell? He opens the org. Well, they cut the ribbon, all that. And the rooms that weren't done, they just painted the door and closed it. There was like not a room behind the door, but the org is completed and done. Not really. Yeah. That's literally how a lot of these go.
Did they even have a certificate of occupancy?
Oh, I have no idea.
I remember that part of it. Some of them they did, and they did not even have a certificate of occupancy from the city yet, and they still did a grand opening. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, so it's a whole big flap. But because they kind of sneakily were doing this setup with me, and they were going to send me, and I was going to blow up. Well, when Henning said, there's no way you guys can say that Marc was here, that is like a suicide move for you, not for Marc.
Right.
And so everybody made like this blood pact that they would just never say that I was there because it would look bad on them. And so, and if he said the systems weren't done, they said, well, we sent Marc Headley and he didn't. It would be like, well, why'd you send Marc Headley? I just busted him off another post. He's supposed to be the UV coating I see on the night shift. Why would you send him? Anyway, so it was this whole political nonsense. Anyway, so probably a week or two goes by, and I hear from the guys in New York, oh, dude, they're asking me like, hey, what did you do with the blah, and how's this going to work? Oh, you got to wire it through this, and there's a closet up there, and I put the stuff up there. And so they're calling me all the time for them to fix it. And then after a week or so, everybody kind of comes back, and everybody arrives back at the Imp base. And this whole time, I'm back to normal, like nothing. I was fully unscathed. And even when I would see people that were the people that were trying to set me up, they'd be like, you mother, and I'd be like, I know, right? Like, sucks to suck, guys. You should have planned that one better. Henning was the rogue element you didn't count on. Anyway, and this is the best part, because Shelly comes down to manufacturing.
Yep.
And I'm in there working, and Caroline, the manufacturing sec, runs out and says, COB assistant's outside. She wants to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, great. And I'm like, here we go. They found out. Somebody found out I was there.
Yep.
And I thought, because Amber saw me, and I know that hit squad people, they're Shelly's people.
Right.
So they're going to tell Shelly, oh yeah, Headley's doing the systems and this, they're going to say what they see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm like, Shelly knew I was there. She had to have known I was there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I go outside and she goes, COB wants to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And he's sitting there on his motorcycle, and I walk over. He goes, if you were in New York, I think the systems would have got done. If you had gone to New York and put in the systems, you're going to be the director of systems, which was a huge promotion from UV coating.
Yeah, on the night shift.
And also, you
were officially no longer under the radar.
Yeah. And also, officially the person that is supposed to do all these systems. And every single person that's ever been the systems director has either gone to the RPF or been offloaded from the Sea Org. Every single one in the history of
escaped.
Systems director.
Yeah, or escaped.
Or blown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Shelly says, you're going to be the systems director, and go, when they ask what we talked about, just let them know you're the systems director now, and that COB said that if you had been in New York, the systems would have been amazing and everything would have gotten done on time. And I was like, yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. You're right, sir. I mean, absolutely. And so then when I walk back in, and Shelly's like, you better get the systems done. I was like, yes, sir. Absolutely. And
so you do think she knew?
I'm positive she knew, because it was like, she is the intel for him.
Yep.
She's the one who finds out stuff and also kind of stacks the deck in your favor, so you'll do the right thing. And so he doesn't freak out, or, tells you to find this or do that. And then he goes, yeah, see, he did the one thing I would have done. And you're like, oh, shit. Thanks, Shelly. So, but, and that was, I want to say that was like in the summer or fall of 2004.
Yes.
Like September, October-ish.
Yep.
And I escaped on January 5th, 2005. So, and to be fair, the entire time I worked on the property, that was my best performances were in the film area. Well, the film area and the systems area, but I did pretty good in manufacturing as well. But either way, that was the most, I would say that I had a lot of dealings with Shelly over that time. And these are all the different things. And between working with Clarice and just being on David Miscavige lines enough and all this good stuff. And that's why when this thing happened where a dispatch had come down from David Miscavige and said, "Oh, I haven't gotten the systems proposal from Headley. If he's not working on that, what is he working on?" And I was like, I submitted that thing like a month ago. It's been bouncing around between all these management people. So don't look at me. Go talk to those guys. The submission was done. And as soon as I got that thing from David Miscavige, I got all my proposals back saying, "Oh, there's a typo on page 14. I was just like, oh, really? Like, here we go with the setup. The setups never end in the Sea Org. Somebody's always trying to step on you to get a step up. Anybody will throw you under the bus in a second. If it's between you and them, you always got to throw that guy under the bus. You just have to. It's a fight. It's the fittest. Only the fittest survive. So
Exactly.
okay. So that's pretty much my story from my time with Shelly at the Ent base. Unless you have any other questions.
Yeah. So 2 other questions. First of all, what were your observations of Shelly's interactions with Dave specifically? Like, what did their relationship seem like to you?
Seemed like she was his assistant and he was the boss. I never saw them hold hands. I never saw them kiss. I never saw them hug. I personally have never ever seen them affectionate with each other in the 15 years that I worked there, and the many times I was in his little apartment at the hacienda, or like they didn't even sleep in the same rooms, I don't think. Because when I was fixing the systems in their apartment, Shelly was coming in and out of a room that she had been sleeping in, and he wasn't in that room. I could see into the room, and it was a bed and she was sleeping in there, and he had a bed in another room. So it was sort of like, I'd only seen that like on I Love Lucy or something. Like, what's up with that?
Separate or the royal family or some strange.
I think even on I Love Lucy, they had separate beds, but they were in the same room. These guys had separate beds in separate rooms.
Yeah.
And Dave was a night owl. He would go to bed at 3 or 4 in the morning every night.
Yeah.
And and he would get up in the late morning, and then he'd be up it was sort of like after lunch is when he would sort of show up.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'd see Shelly down in manufacturing talking with Clarice in the morning. So she even appeared to be on a different schedule, even though she was his assistant. I never saw them affectionate ever.
Okay. And did you ever see David Miscavige be physically or emotionally or verbally abusive to Shelly?
Oh, yeah. He would yell at her all the time. He would be like, like blaming things on her. Like, how did you let this happen? Or how is this now? How am I now how is this getting to me? Right. Or, how can you pretend to be doing your job if this is what, that kind of like, you're just like, And also I would say as part of that, there would be times where we'd have a meeting where he would be screaming and yelling and going crazy the whole meeting. And then after the meeting, we would get told not to leave. And then she would come back to the meeting and plead with us. You guys, you got to get this done. You don't want to not get what he's asking you to get done.
Yeah.
You have to get it done. Like, sort of like, insinuating horrible things are going to happen if you don't get this done. And she would, sometimes she would be emotional about this. Like, you have to get this done. Like, I'm trying as hard as I can for you. I'm trying to fight for you guys that you're going to be able to get this done. I'm trying to give you as much help, but you have to get it done.
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't get it. Would never get it. Was always these things that would, in any other place, you could get it done, no problem.
Yeah. But
when you give it to him done, it's never the way he wants it.
Right.
So there were things like even that thing where the positions and the organization board and getting everything done, which he had been ordering for years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
It had been, that had been proposed to him maybe 100 different times.
That's
or
right.
There'd been 100 versions of the proposal. It could never get approved.
Yeah.
Because
in fact, it had been a mandate from him to get that done since July 99. And now this was all the way
2004.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing that would happen is that it was like a house of cards, this whole proposal. Like, let's say there's 800 people that have to be this person. This is the best part, is that the whole place had been posted not based on anyone's skill set. It was all politics and biases and frenzies, and I like this guy, so I'll put him on this job. And that's how it had been done.
This guy has never tried to escape, so therefore he qualifies to be an executive.
Exactly. So the entire structure of the entire Sea Org is made up of people that might not be the best person to do that job, but they have that job through this process of elimination of they never got in trouble, so they rise to the top because everyone else has gotten in trouble. And David Miscavige is keeping a tab on every single person that's ever gotten in trouble. And so when you say, I would like to get this person, you're like, wasn't that guy sticking a shampoo bottle up his butt in 87? And you're just like, holy moly, how do you know this? Like, why do you have this information in your head?
Right.
And so there would be this proposal. And by the time they would get him the proposal, David Miscavige had already shot out 3 or 4 cards at the bottom of the stack, which is just make the whole thing fall apart, and they have to redo the whole thing. And this would be a constant struggle.
Yeah, and even some of those were not even because of something the person did, but simply because they looked at Miscavige in a way he didn't like in a meeting. That was it.
So either way, Shelly would be the person saying, you got to get this done. And she would even sometimes come and say, don't put that person there, put this person there. COB will never approve that person on that post. Yeah. And you would think, you would be under the impression that she knows, or she's telling him, or she knows what he wants because she's rearranging it in a certain way. Yeah. And so that's why after we escaped, and we found out that she had just gone and done it. She basically just said, enough. And she just put the people where, like, enough. This is done. We're ending this. Yeah. And she went and ended, which you think about it, if she got in trouble for doing that, and she also got into trouble for thinking that he had his ring, he had taken his wedding ring, or she was wondering if he was wearing the ring, or, she was questioning his actions.
Right.
And so because she had done that, I think it was a good excuse to say, you shouldn't have done that. You're now banished. Yeah. And that was sort of optically for everybody else, that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though she was doing other things that people don't know she was doing, which was the real reason she was banished. But either way, I want to say that last 2003, 2004 was when Shelly was more on our side than she was on Dave's side. Right. And so there was a time when if you were in gold, you were shit. And if you were in CMO8, you were good. And if you were in RTC, you were good. Yep. And then for a while it was if you were in gold, you were good. But if you were in management, you were shit. And if you're in RTC, you were good. And then in the 2000s, it was like, it didn't matter where you were. It didn't matter. Unless you were in RTC, you were shit. 2003 and 2004, it didn't even matter if you were in RTC. That's you were shit. Yep. You had to be in Dave's office not to be shit. Even if you were in Religious Technology Center, if you didn't work directly for COB in his office, not even just have him as a senior, you had to be in his office. And wasn't there a time when the new RTC building was built and only the people in his office occupied the RTC building? The RTC staff still were in the old RTC building. Yep. They weren't allowed to move into the RTC building with COB RTC.
No, absolutely. We were not.
And that was in 2003, 2004 time where if you didn't work for him, you were shit.
Yeah.
And then in the end of 2004, even if you worked for him, you could be shit.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like people had their comfort zone and he erased all comfort zones for every single person. So even like Tori Viao and what was the Frenchie? What was his name? Francois Lalouette.
Yes.
Even Francois. These guys would come down and you'd be like, wow, I think even Francois is on our side now. Like nobody is sacred. You knew that. You knew that as any Sea Org member at the end base. You were like, oh yeah, and it's like all bets are off. Like nobody is safe from his wrath anymore.
Absolutely. Okay, I have two last questions.
Yeah.
Number one, so in the 15 years that you were at the base and seeing Shelly with David Miscavige every single day and knowing that she was his assistant, his, first lady, as it were, whatever you want to call it, right-hand woman, what impact would it have had on you had she been vaporized at the time you were still there?
If she got disappeared while I was there?
Yes.
What impact?
Like what would you have thought? Like it would have hit you, right? You would have noticed.
100%.
Yeah.
And there were certain people that would disappear every once in a while.
Yeah.
And you would usually find out what happened to them.
Yeah.
But sometimes you wouldn't. They wouldn't say that they escaped. Like that's what happened with Ronnie Miscavige and Biddy Miscavige.
True. Yeah.
They left, but nobody knew where they went.
Yeah.
And there was no story being told to the general crew about what happened. A few people knew, like, I think they left and there was some kind of weird thing, but then we had to get all their stuff and send it to them. And so you're like, why are we getting their stuff if they, it was sort of like, well, there must have been something that, and this was when Ronnie and Biddy had both been horribly mistreated by David Miscavige.
Right.
So I think
that's a really great example because obviously I was in Religious Technology Center. I knew what happened, but like you and I never talked about it.
No, we could never. So, but I'm just thinking if Shelly, so like, it's funny that you say that because when Shelly was getting more and more desperate, it was sort of like even for her to be emotional with us, like be like almost at the edge of tears when she's talking with us, you're like that. You're not supposed to do that. Like even if you're in gold, you're not supposed to do that. Like you're supposed to be, what do you call it in RTC?
Hard as cold chrome steel.
Hard as cold chrome steel. You're not supposed to be getting emotional with Golden Era production guys.
Right.
That's like even I know, like my wife don't even pull that shit. So like, I know you're not supposed to be doing it. You're supposed to be like unfazable. Basically, you're supposed to be a chairman of the board robot and you don't emote. That's illegal.
Yes.
So even when she was doing that, you're like, oh, it must be fucked up there. Some shit must be going down if she's his assistant. She's his wife. She's been with him the whole time and she is freaking out. So that was, for me, that's when I was like, yeah, I'm out. Because if she's my ace in the hole, or she's at least given me a little like assistance here and there. I'm not going to say that she was really stacking the deck for me all that well, because I got burned a whole bunch of times, even after she helped me out. And sometimes the thing she said to do was the thing that I got burned doing. So there were times where it didn't work in my favor. But regardless, if she ain't safe, if she doesn't have it locked up, well, I'm not going to even pretend that I've got it locked up. There's
Right.
And that's where it was sort of like when push came to shove, it's like, oh, I'd rather be homeless on the streets than be at this place. Like homeless on the streets or working in the Sea Org, they always say, if you leave here, the best you'll ever do is flipping burgers. Flipping burgers would be a goddamn paradise compared to this place. Anything, digging ditches for the city would be a glorious step up from that. Anything would be just not being here would be better than this.
Exactly.
Doing nothing.
Yep.
So yeah, I think and of course, I mean, we got out of there in January 2005. She was not there much longer than that. So it was. I mean, I was reading the tea leaves correctly when this was all going down. Like, it's not, and that was the thing. When you're at the Ent base or you're in the Sea Org or whatever, and I've talked to dozens of Sea Org members who say the same thing, you always think, well, at least it can't get any worse than this, because this is so horrible that it has to get better. It just can't get worse than this.
Right.
And every year, somehow, it would get worse.
Yeah,
and so it got to a point where you're like, oh no, this is 100% miserable 100% of the time. There's no good, like my wife's here. That's not even a good enough reason for me to stay here anymore. No. So that is... And now that I think of it, that may have even influenced my decision to be like, this broad lives with him and she can't even like guarantee her future. So
absolutely.
What am I like? And also that was the part where I was realizing when I was going, to be honest, I was going to these organizations with doing these audio-visual systems, and I was seeing that they're shit. They're all empty. There's nobody in them. They're 100% empty. And I'm thinking, I've been working for 15 years to fill these things up. And they're telling us that they're filling them up. They ain't. They're all empty. So it's like, why bother? This is a giant mental nonsense exercise that's resulting in nothing for me and nothing even for the people that I'm working with. So why should I do this? Totally. So, but yeah, that's my, is there anything else? I think that's pretty much all the stuff I've got with Shelly.
One last question.
Yeah.
If you had the chance today, what would you tell Shelly?
I'd tell her that there's tons of people that would support her and help her flourish on the outside world. And that if she wanted to honor L. Ron Hubbard and his legacy, that she should find out about some of his history and get educated on what happened before she met him. And it may be even some of the things that happened before the Sea Org and stuff like that. And, you know, there's a lot of people, like, she's loyal to L. Ron Hubbard. She was raised by the Sea Organization, essentially, as a child. And that's all she's ever known. She's been in the Sea Org for like 50 something years I mean, how old is she now? She should
62.
be about.
She's been in, she's 62 and she's been in the Sea Org for roughly 50 years.
Yeah. So that's a long time to be doing one thing for no good reason. And that's the part where you think, well, is she trying to escape? Or she could have, in 2005-ish, 2006, whenever she was banished, I'm pretty sure she was thought of as unstable, or she might fly the coop. That might have been, or the fact that she was questioning David Miscavige means she's not the right person to be his assistant and his wife. If she's not, you know, ride or die, then she needs to go. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard because, you know, she's brainwashed. She's under the spell of all this. She could still be one of those people that's waiting for L. Ron Hubbard to come back. Sure. And until he comes back, she's going to be there waiting for him to come back. Right. So the fact that they've kind of hidden her away in the mountains in California at the Church of Spiritual Technology in Running Springs.
Yeah,
the
allegedly, if she's even still in the United States of America.
Yeah, if she's even still alive. There have been Sea Org members that we've talked about that have been at the end base, and then we find out somebody digs up their death certificate, and we find out, oh, I guess Annie Tidman did pass away from cancer. And so that's that person off the board. Yes. So, and that is usually how Scientology play this game. If there's a player on the board that is suspect or possibly would move to the other side, they disappear that person until they're no longer on the board. Right. They just put them out to pasture, keep them happy, or keep them isolated or siloed somewhere.
And eventually, definitely keep them under wraps.
Yeah, just keep them somewhere where they're not going to be able to leave and they're not going to be able to cause any trouble, and they're happy being a busy worker bee. And then when it comes time to move them off to the convalescent home and put them on a feeding tube or whatever, we'll do that, and then we'll just hold out until they're gone forever. Right. And that is literally what they did to Charlie Rush, Annie Tidman, Spike Bush, any of these people that we don't know where this guy's going to end up. We're just going to keep him away until he's no longer a threat. And if they manage to escape, then we're going to keep our eyes on them. So it's going to be cheaper for us to put them somewhere we can control rather than pay PIs full-time day and night to watch them.
Yes, and true. But especially when things that started backfiring on them.
Yeah, but even if they do manage to escape, then we'll just do the private investigator route, and that's how we'll keep eyes on them. So even Shelly, and this is the craziest part of the Shelly story. Yeah, we think we know where she is, and every time somebody's gone up to look for her, there's private investigators everywhere watching that place. Yep, and when she goes out, she's got somebody with her. She went to her father's funeral. She had 2 people with her. When she, all these times where she's been seen in the wild, she's had minders with her.
That's right.
So she's not driving down to the convenience store picking up a Mountain Dew on her own. If she gets let out of her cage, she's with a trainer who's got her on a short leash. Yeah. And so they're definitely worried about her. Yep. Because otherwise, that if she was seen out in the wild, she'd just be by herself.
Yep, exactly. Ain't that the truth? Awesome. Well, I think that covers it unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think maybe we'll do a video where I ask you questions about Shelly.
Yes,
definitely. And then if we think of any other, mutual stories or whatever, we could talk about it. But I think after 15 years of working at the international headquarters and dealing, and you can attest to this, that I would actually have a lot more conversations with Dave and Shelly than a large percentage of the people on that property in Golden Era, at least. Because
absolutely.
I just, I don't know why, but I did have a lot of dealings with them. And also, let's not forget I'll tell one last story. Okay. Right before we left, Christmas 2004, I was one of the very few people on the international base that had access to the internet. Yes. And I bought off of eBay a little book that Elbert Hubbard, L. Ron Hubbard's uncle, had written in 1914 or something. Yep. I bought this
Message to Garcia.
It was a leather-bound booklet that was printed off by, I think it was called Roy Crafters, and thousands and thousands of these were printed in the early 1900s. I got an original one, and I gave it to Dave and Shelly as a Christmas present. This is like a week before I escaped.
Yeah. And for context, this is a book that Hubbard references in a policy that Shelly would promote all the time, which is called Responsibilities of Leaders, where one of the main concepts or ideas is that you should flow power to the executive and help them in any way you can, and so on and so forth. And that book was referenced in that policy.
Yeah. And so the fact that I had found this book And then I made like a little velvet box for it and everything. And I gave it to Dave and Shelly as a Christmas present. It cost me like $4.99 on eBay. It wasn't a big purchase. Who wants some little booklet written by some fuddy-duddy in 1904? Not many. Anyway, but I got it. I thought it was kind of cool. And I made a little velvet box for it. And I was literally like doing really good at this time. I was getting systems approvals and he was approving my proposals and people were like, oh, Headley's really, pulling off some wins here. And when I gave it to him, he announced to all of the property that he had gotten the only on-source present from Claire and I. Was the only present that he had gotten that followed L. Ron Hubbard's, intentions. And because it was this rare thing that Hubbard had talked about in this lecture, or this policy letter, there's a lecture where Hubbard reads the entire story.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
He mentions it in policies, but he also reads the entire story from the booklet, a booklet or a printing or whatever. But, so that happened like on December 26th or 27th when he's like, yeah, Claire and Marc are rock stars. They're the only ones who gave us people bought him $1,000 shoes and $10,000 suits and $20,000 bicycles. And I bought him a $4.99 booklet from eBay, and it was the best present that he got. And that was 1 week before I escaped. And now I was the most horrible criminal to ever work there.
Yep, exactly. That's
and Shelly, when Shelly saw me after she got that, she was like, yeah, that was pretty baller. Like that was, I didn't tee that one up for you. You knocked that one out of the park. And I was like, yeah, I know, like sometimes I have a good idea every once in a while.
Yeah. Awesome. Wrap up on that note. Thank you so much for participating in my series. And
absolutely,
we'll do 2 more episodes. One with you interviewing me, and then we'll do one just dedicated to Shelly's dad, Barney, and our experiences with him, and Suzette, Shelly's half sister. Awesome. That's all for today.
Thank you. Bye, guys.